To understand why the Villisca axe murders shocked not only the local community, but the entire nation, we first need to take a closer look at the town itself, the place where this unimaginable tragedy would eventually unfold. So I'm taking you back to 1912, Villisca, Iowa. It was a small, tight-knit railroad town nestled in the southwestern part of the state. It was the kind of place that seemed frozen in time, a town where life moved at a slow, steady pace. Doors were left unlocked at night, children roamed freely through the streets, playing games of tag, chasing after baseballs, and laughing in the warmth of summer evenings. Neighbors knew each other's routines, families were intertwined through church, school, and local businesses, and gossip, when it existed, traveled quickly from doorstep to doorstep. Crimes, especially violent ones, were thought to be something that happened elsewhere, in the cities or along the railways or in faraway towns that had grown too large for anyone to notice. Villisca prided itself on safety, its familiarity, and its sense of community. People trusted one another. They relied on each other. They lived their lives in a rhythm that was comforting, predictable, and almost serene. Now, the town itself was modest but vibrant. Main Street bustled during the day with the comings and goings of farmers, shopkeepers, and travelers passing through on the railway. At night, the streets emptied, leaving only the soft glow of gas lamps to illuminate the quiet homes. The air smelled of fresh bread from a bakery, coal smoke from the train tracks, and the sweet fragrance of gardens tended lovingly by residents who had lived there for generations. Villisca's population hovered just above 2,000 people. In such a small community, everyone knew everyone else, and secrets were hard to keep. News traveled fast, but scandals were rare. When something went wrong, it wasn't contained behind closed doors. It became talk of the town, dissected at the general store or at church services and along the fences of backyard gardens. And yet, despite this, there was an unspoken sense of safety and normalcy, a belief that life would continue uninterrupted, without tragedy and without violence. Life in Villisca followed a predictable, comforting rhythm. Sundays were reserved for church, where families gathered to worship and connect with one another. Weekdays were for work, the farms, the shops, the businesses that kept the town alive. Evenings were quiet, spent around family tables or on the front porches watching the sunset. The simplicity of it all gave the townspeople a sense of peace, of order, and of trust that the world outside their borders was a faraway concern. And at the very center of this quiet, orderly life lived the Moore family. Josiah and Sarah Moore, along with their 4 children, were not only well-respected members of the community, but a representation of everything Villisca valued: hard work, devotion to family, and a life lived in routine and faith. They were ordinary people, living an ordinary life in an ordinary town. A life that, in the span of a single night, would be shattered in a way that the community would never forget. So, let's meet the family. We have Josiah B. Moore. He was 43 years old and a man whose reputation in Villisca extended far beyond his own household. He was a successful and well-respected businessman, co-owner of a farm implement company that provided essential agriculture equipment to the local farmers who surrounded the town. Josiah was a man of ambition and determination. He carried himself with a quiet confidence, the kind of presence that commanded respect without needing to raise a voice. Many admired his work ethic, his dedication to his business, and his family, while some found him strict, particularly when it came to discipline and the management of his company. But one thing was certain: no one in Villisca ever questioned his standing in the community. He was a man who embodied the ideals of responsibility, respectability, and diligence. His wife, Sarah Moore, was 39 years old, a woman whose gentleness and quiet strength balanced her husband's authority. Sarah was deeply religious, a constant presence at the town's Presbyterian church, where she contributed tirelessly to Sunday services, social gatherings as well, and charitable events. Her soft-spoken nature and warm demeanor made her well-liked among neighbors and friends. Yet beneath her calm exterior, Sarah struggled with recurring health issues, which at times limited her energy, but never her devotion to her family or her community. She was a mother in the truest sense, attentive, nurturing, and endlessly patient with her children. Together, Josiah and Sarah Moore had 4 children, each with their own distinct personality and place in the life of the household. Herman, the eldest at 11, was thoughtful and responsible, often helping his father around the yard and keeping a watchful eye on his younger siblings. There's Mary Catherine, who was 10, intelligent and curious, a lively girl who loved reading and enjoyed joining the other children in play around the neighborhood. 7-year-old Arthur was adventurous and energetic. He was the kind of child who could spend hours running through the fields or inventing games with the other boys in town. And finally, little Paul at 5 was the youngest and most vulnerable, still clinging to the comforting routines of family life and parental protection, of course. The Moore children were familiar faces through Villisca. They attended school regularly, engaged enthusiastically in church activities, and were often spotted playing together in the yard of their home at 508 East 2nd Street. Neighbors recalled seeing them laughing and running along the quiet streets. Their innocence was a reflection of the town itself, safe, predictable, and orderly. The Moore house was a modest, simple white wood frame structure with a welcoming front porch that looked out onto the street. It was positioned just off the railroad line, close enough to the tracks to hear the distant whistle of passing trains, but far enough away to enjoy the quiet of residential life. The property was not isolated. Neighbors lived close by, their own homes forming a protective ring around the Moore residence. Yet despite its proximity to others, the house exuded a sense of calm and privacy. It was a home that should have been safe, a sanctuary where a family could thrive without fear, a place where, in the mind of every person who lived there, nothing terrible could ever happen. But as we now know, safety can be an illusion. And for the Moore family, that illusion was about to be shattered in the most horrific way imaginable. On the evening of Sunday, June 9th, 1912, 2 other children would cross the threshold of the Moore home. 2 girls whose presence that night would make the tragedy even more heart-wrenching. We have Ina Mae Stillinger. She was 8 years old, bright-eyed and full of the kind of innocence only a child could possess. Her older sister, Lena Gertrude Stillinger, was 12, quiet and thoughtful, with a maturity beyond her years that made her both protective of her younger sister and gentle with the younger Moore children as well. The Stillinger girls lived nearby in a home not far from the Moore residence. They were well known in the community as well, friendly and polite, attending school regularly too, and participating in the same church activities. Over the years, the Stillingers had become friends with the Moore children. They played together in the streets, shared stories, and spent long summer afternoons imagining adventures in the fields surrounding Villisca. Their lives, like those of the Moore children, were filled with simple joys: the school, play, church, and family. That Sunday evening, all 6 children, the Moore siblings and the Stillinger girls, had attended a Children's Day program at the Presbyterian Church. It was an event that brought together the children for games, songs, and a sense of community. Parents lingered at the church afterwards, chatting quietly, exchanging greetings, and enjoying the pleasant routine of small-town life. When the program ended, the Stillinger girls approached their parents with a simple request. Could they spend the night at the Moore family house? Perhaps it was the warmth of friendship or the comfort of routine, but their parents agreed. They could walk the short distance to the Moore home and join the other children, for it was meant to be a night of innocent fun. A simple sleepover filled with stories, games, and the laughter of children and the safety of a familiar home. It was, in every sense, a perfect, ordinary decision. Nothing about that evening suggested danger or foreshadowed the horror that would unfold.